Okay, this is Mike Perlacki, CIS 222, Intro to Windows Servers with Dr. Schenke. This is my final project. I chose to go the route of installing Windows Server on Azure. After you have your Azure account all set up, you're going to navigate to portal.azure.com, and that should take you to the home screen. On the left-hand side, we have a toolbar. We'll extend that. To get our instance of Windows Server going, we're going to go down to Virtual Machines. We'll close that back up and click down here on Create Virtual Machine. This will take us into our wizard that'll take us through a few different steps and help us get started. First thing we have is our subscription. There's a couple different options. We're in free trial now. Or pay-as-you-go is another option that would typically be seen. For resource group, this will allow us to put all of the resources we're going to create into one group and sort of contain them. We're going to come down here and name our virtual machine. So, Mike Final Project. Below that, we're going to choose what region we're in. Now this will allow us to pick several different regions throughout the world, and we're going to pick whichever one is best suited for our business or whatever we're doing. We're in the East Coast, so we'll just pick East. Availability options. If you had multiple machines running and you needed some redundancy, this would allow you to have multiple virtual machines running on different machines. So if there were some issues with a machine going down, you'd be able to negate some of that. On the image, this is going to allow us to pick what we want to run. There's multiple different options here through different Windows, Linux, SQL servers, Red Hat. We're going to come back up and find server 16 right here. Below that, we're going to pick the machine size. It defaults to one virtual CPU, 3.5 gigs of memory. We can click change size and see a few different sizes of machines we can go through. This will give you the option to pick different sizes depending on what your needs will be. But we can let it with the standard default. Below that, we're going to create our username and password. We're going to use this to actually log into the machine later. Okay. To get into our machine, we're going to have to allow some port to be open. And below here we have a few different options: HTTP, HTTPS if we were creating a web server, SSH if we had a Linux machine, and we'll pick RDP for our Windows machine. It also gives you the option to save a little money if you already have a Windows license. We do not, so we'll just continue forward. Next, in disks, we have the option to pick Premium SSD, Standard, or Standard Mechanical Drive. We'll let Premium SSD selected. We also have an option for certain machines for the ultra solid state, but this machine does not have that option available. Next, it's going to show us the VNet that it created for us, a subnet, and our public IP. Below that, it gives us a few options for some security. We can let that at the default. Standard inbound port, just referring back to the previous screen of how we're going to get in. Accelerated networking, if you had multiple different larger machines running, this step would save you some configuring later, as well as the load balancing option if there were multiple VMs running. Selecting yes now would save you a little bit of time on the back end configuring that. In management, it gives us a couple different options here to monitor some diagnostic statuses. We can let those at the default. We are going to enable auto shutdown on this page. If you were to forget to log out of your machine and disable it, this would turn it off later so you wouldn't continue getting billed. So we'll just shut this off at 11 tonight. Here, if you wanted to install any extensions or scripts to run with your machine, you could add them on this page. And then on tags, this gives us the option to organize a little bit for billing purposes. This would just kind of clean up your billing so you could see what was what. And we missed something on basics. I'm not sure why it doesn't like that. Oop, I had too many characters. Okay, back to review and create. So we can see that our hourly rate is going to be about 12.5 cents an hour to run our machine. And then there's some terms and conditions that you're agreeing to when you click create. And we can go back through and just review everything that we did, make sure we're happy with everything. At the bottom of this page, it gives us the option to download a template for automation. If we created a machine that we wanted to replicate later and we didn't want to have to go through the wizard step by step, we could download this template. To save a little bit of time, you could attach it to something like an API and have them deployed automatically for you as well. And we're going to go ahead and click create. And this will start to install our VM. This generally takes about 4 to 5 minutes. It brings you into this screen here that kind of gives you a status update, tells you how long you've been going. And in the interest of time, I'm going to pause for a second and I will be right back when we are installed. Okay, we're back and it looks like we have a successful deployment. So we can see that there's a couple different resources created. We have a virtual machine. We have a VNet, a public IP, a VNIC, a storage disk, and a security group. We can pop up here to go to resources. And it's going to show us some network statistics, CPU usage, network traffic, how much we have on our disks. If we look up here, it's assigned us a public IP address, and we can see that all of our options we configured from the beginning are still here. Up in the top left, we have an option to connect, so this will actually get us into our machine. With our public IP and our port number we configured before, so we're going to click download RDP file. We're going to jump down here and open that up. This is just asking if we want to connect. So we'll say yes. And then our password from earlier. We want to be in another account. That was my local machine. All right, sometimes I make a couple typos, but that's okay. This is just asking if we're sure we want to connect to this because there's no publicly signed certificate. We'll click yes. And we'll give our machine just a minute to boot up. And it looks like we are into our server. We'll give this a minute to keep booting up. So from this point, you should be able to do everything you would normally be able to do in a standard install on a local physical machine. We can open up Server Manager. And everything we have access to previously is also here. And from here, we could configure our server to whatever we saw fit, whether that was a DNS server, DHCP, web server, Active Directory. And that concludes my install of Windows Server 16 on Azure.